Hello. Welcome to another Hive Live with Hillary and Michelle. Glad to have you here today. This is our holiday edition because we are looking down the barrel of Thanksgiving and Christmas and lots of other holidays coming up, but we thought we would talk about it because we've gotten some good questions about how to have spiritual holiday, meaningful holiday time in your own house, as well as some of the bigger questions of how do you handle family relationships during the holidays. So we're gonna solve it all today.
Let's do that.
And let's do. At the beginning, though, let's have our book club plug.
So we are reading. I brought the real book this
Yeah.
time. There you go. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. If the book doesn't sound familiar to you, the title may, because it's a movie that's out now. Although I'm reading the book before I watch the movie.
Smart.
It is. Actually, it was written as like a young adult teen book, but
Right.
it's just so good that lots of adults are reading it too.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had an experience with some teenagers at a youth event last weekend, where some teenagers were talking about the idea of like changing who you are depending on where you are, which is
like a chameleon type.
Yeah, and this is a common theme in this book. It's about a girl who, she's a black young woman who goes to a suburban prep school, so a predominantly white school, and how she has to put on these different identities. But then a tragedy happens where she has to make some big decisions.
Amazing.
So I think it's a good book, and it's a good thing, especially for people who that is not their reality, to really put themselves into someone else's shoes, and I think that's important
huge.
right
That's
now.
absolutely important. It won an award too. What was
it? Did. It won a Nonviolent Social Change Honor, a Coretta Scott King Award, and it also won the Michael Prince Award for Excellence in Young Adult Literature from the American Library Association.
There you go.
So it's a good book.
Also, if you have a teen in your life that you'd like to read it with, they are more than welcome to join the Hive Book Club. So read it either perhaps with a young adult in your life. So good.
It's good stuff, heavy stuff.
Heavy stuff. Thank you. Michelle has done the amazing thing that she normally does, which is she brought us some show and tell. I'm loving it. Can you show me some of what you brought? This is holiday traditions. We're going to start with holiday traditions in your house.
So, and I'm going to admit this first one is happening at church right now and not in my house because my life is busy.
This
but
is like a home.
We're getting there. This is my church home.
There we go.
So this is a thankful tree. Yours can be fancy or not. This is a vase I found in the basement at church. These are things we once used at our house. But each day or however often you feel so moved, you put a leaf. These are just construction paper on the tree that says something you're thankful for. A lot of people have the tradition of doing this and then reading those off before their Thanksgiving meal.
Nice.
You can do it this way. I've done it on the wall with paper before.
Yeah, it's a little bulletin board.
Board. I think my kids were behind, but I think our intention this year would be we're going to put it, we have a big window on our front door, and we're just going to put it there because it's visible. And we can post this later. There's just some like print and go kind of versions of this online where you can do it. I've sent it home in a worksheet version for my kids at school before.
All ages love this. All ages love. One thing I wanted to mention along that line that we are currently doing on the Hive that is great to expand this even further. We're doing right now a 30-day examine challenge, and that's a style of prayer that includes a high level of gratitude every single day as one of the 5 steps. Lots of information about the Hive. It's going great. Rebecca's doing an amazing job. So feel free to add that as part of, if you want to go deeper in gratitude this Thanksgiving season, that's one way to do it. Add a new style of prayer, and this fits in with that beautifully. It's like a great way to get maybe even kids involved in doing that.
I think so too, and it comes out of our last book club. We talked a lot about gratitude too, and how that reorients you, which is important, especially now with all of the ick going on in our world, to remember to be grateful. So
to me, so you'll hear this in my Thanksgiving sermon, so act surprised. But to me, gratitude is the greatest. I hate to use this word, but I'm going to use it and explain what I mean. It's like our greatest spiritual weapon against the darkness. The thing that, and I use weapon because it's that thing that cuts the darkness away, like an agent of peace. And to me, gratitude is such a central part of what we need. So this is a good way to practice that. I like that a lot.
It's the lens through which you can see the world. You either put on your gratitude glasses. This is what I tell my students. Put on your gratitude glasses, or you put on the, like, life is crappy glasses. And it really...
It'll look that way to you.
It does.
So Thanksgiving, what happens when we move from Thanksgiving? What's the next thing as, like, the Advent season that we enter into? One of my favorites of the whole year.
I love that.
You have some good stuff here for Advent.
I do. So I'm going to start with something new. These are something that Rebecca...
Yeah, another shout out.
Hi, Rebecca. Rebecca found these, but so we're going to be distributing these at church to our families, and I have now snagged mine early. But it's a pack. It looks like playing cards. Their families celebrate Advent and Christmas, year specific, and each day you pull out a card, and they're numbered by day, and it tells you, it gives you a prayer or something to say or do. So we'll pull out a random one. So Friday, December 14th. During Advent, we do special things that help you get excited for Christmas. Do you or your family have a favorite Christmas movie? Take a break, oh, I like this one, from the busyness of the season and have a movie night. Put on cozy PJs, pop a big bowl of popcorn and enjoy. And some of them aren't that time consuming. Some of them are just say a prayer and light a candle. Along with this is the practice of an Advent wreath, which this uses the Advent wreath. So I want to show you a few ways that you can do an Advent wreath. This actually is a fun grab and go alternative to an Advent wreath. So if you don't know what an Advent wreath is, in its most traditional form, it would be not fake, but real greenery with candles put in. You would have 3 purple, 1 pink, and then...
Or all 4 blue. Or any color candle you have.
Just candles. Just candles.
Yes.
And then a Christ candle in the middle, which is white. Mine is big because Jesus. So you can do that. Or you can do what we started here at St. Christopher's last year, and I loved it so much I brought it home instead of the big taper candle version, where you have a little family craft night, and you take,
these are cool.
just take like a regular tea light like that, and you can get Mod Podge, or if you don't have Mod Podge because that stuff's expensive, just use glue or glue and water and put tissue paper on it, or if you have permanent markers, whatever.
Just color in.
You color them, and then you can get like a frosty white one, or just leave it alone for the Christ candle. The one that this packet has in it that I thought was cool, if you travel for Christmas and it's impractical to bring all that because it will break.
Yeah. Or let's say one night you're running around and you stop at a restaurant for dinner and you're like, well, how are we going to practice? Maybe we do our Advent calendar around, our wreath around dinner tables, and now we don't have our dinner. What would you do?
What would you do? Well, this actually is a picture of putting it in a sandwich, which is cute.
Kind of brilliant.
But, which I really like. But a grab and go being like, take your birthday candles, those extra ones that didn't fit because, the age was wrong.
You have them in your junk drawer. Yeah, seriously.
I have a big junk drawer. And then a ball of clay and a book of matches. You put your candles in the clay, you light the number of candles for the week, and you say, "Come, Lord Jesus, shine with us. Help us to notice your love in the world. Amen." My little girl knows the phrase, "Come, Lord Jesus," very well because
that's very Advent.
We've done this. So, and my advice on that or any tradition, and then I have one more, is just if you do have family visitors as we get ready to jump into family discussions, invite them into your traditions. Invite your visitors into your tradition because it's beautiful and it's holy. However, I advise explaining those traditions to your family and friends first. Maybe when your kids aren't around, or have a gentle conversation about being open to things, because I've actually had a couple of funny experiences where a family member was taken aback by a tradition that was unfamiliar to them and asked some questions that were confusing to my children. So, just explain them first.
I love that idea. Travel wreaths are a great excuse to get muffins. Oh, absolutely. You're a nonstop good idea machine, Rebecca. The other thing that I think is really useful in these sort of conversations is the invitation to be a part of something a little different. Like, this is how our family celebrates this.
What do you do?
Exactly. If you're unfamiliar with the Advent wreath in particular, Michelle has given us an amazing video tutorial that's already on the Hive. So if you need more and you're like, what is this we're even talking about? Check out the Hive. We got a good little tutorial for you.
Yeah, and maybe we can post a story to go with it at some point, because there's some really nice stories that explain what each candle means, and like biblically too.
Yep.
I said that weird, biblically.
It's a deep tradition.
It is.
Yeah.
And so our last tradition are very European, looking wise men. These are plastic. One thing that you can do if you are someone who keeps a nativity or a manger scene out at your home, to hide baby Jesus until Christmas. We don't put Jesus in because he's not there yet. We're waiting.
It's a great practice to stretch out that Advent season and really mark it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then to hide these babies too and start moving them closer as you get closer to Christmas. But actually they don't make it there until Epiphany. So they start traveling and you get to your Christmas celebration and they're still there. So don't put your nativity scene up until after Christmas, when we get to Epiphany, when these guys finally arrive.
What I love about that is our culture tends to think of Christmas as one giant day where you just, explode into a ball of consumerism. But the actual Christmas holiday is a 12-day liturgical feast, and so this extends it into Epiphany, which is when the wise men are more traditionally there. So we kind of conflate it all into one day and one night. This extends it, and the messages of love and peace that go along with it, that you want to keep the message going throughout a much longer season. This is a great tradition to do that. So finally the wise men arrive. Some families, when they do this, they have a big Epiphany party, like the king's cake. That's a great tradition for this, especially from New Orleans. You're going to hide that baby in a king's cake. So there's lots of really fun things you can do to mark Epiphany as well. So
Little Christmas.
Little Christmas.
And we don't put our tree away until then. It's usually real dry by then, but we
Perfect
don't.
for a Christmas tree burn.
That's
if
right.
you're doing a 12th night.
That do that. So.
We love our Christmas tree burn. Okay. Thank you. Those were some amazing show and tell. I think that this is probably one of the most fun Hive Lives so far.
Props.
So we had a couple of really great questions come in from you all about holidays and how to deal with family in particular. Let's start with the first one, the transformation question, because I think it will lead us into how do we get to transformation. So here we go. Another question for the Hive, transformation. Many people say that people do not change or cannot change. But in the Bible, there are many stories about change, great change, healing from past behavior, healing from shame, and the breaking of negative generational cycles through the power of God. How does God do this? What, if anything, is required for change and transformation to occur? How can we share this and offer it to people that we love so that they can change also if they would like, as well as our own change that we're looking for? And she mentioned a transformation icon that I've used a couple times, so we'll use that to explain. It's a great question, especially when you're about to enter into a holiday season where you might have to go see, Cousin Joe, who you're like, Cousin Joe will never change. He will always be a jerk. He will always be whatever, and the invitation then is to say, perhaps perhaps what needs to change is my lack of expectation that there can be change. Like that's the first transformation that I think can occur. And I'll explain kind of what I mean. So to do so, I brought a show and tell too. Oh, hello. We're just so show and telly today. This is one of my all-time favorite icons. I think I've even used it once here on a Hive Live as well. Oh, thank you. So I can point. This is the icon of the Transfiguration. In the Russian Orthodox Church in particular, this is one of the most major stories in the Bible for us as well. But their entire liturgical architecture is kind of built into this. The story of the transformation you can see in miniature here. Jesus leading his disciples up the hill, calling them for three of his besties, James, John, and Peter, make their way up the mountain where Jesus is transfigured on top. He's there with Elijah and with Moses, and he is literally transfigured before them. He is sparkling and dazzling array. They see him transformed. God, a voice from heaven says, "This is my son. Listen to him." They get so excited about being there. Peter, as you can see in the middle here, some of them are crawling away. Peter, though, he's saying, "Oh, I've got an idea," because he always does. Let's make a little house here. 3 of them, shall we? 1 for you, 1 for Moses, 1 for Elijah. Oh, Peter, never quite getting it right. I know, he's so great. Instead, though, at the end, Jesus is almost pushing them down the mountain, saying like, "No, you've been transformed in this moment, but you need to bring that transformation back to the world." So remember this story as we talk about how transformation works spiritually. So first of all, the idea here is that transformation normally doesn't happen like that, right? There's a journey. Like, they actually have to make their way up this mountain. We know that it was a long journey because the scripture says that they were exhausted by the time they get there. My sister just asked me what I want for dinner tonight. Something delicious, please. And by the time you get back down the other side that they've been changed. I can barely make a journey downtown without having something changed in me. Sometimes it's just by the podcast I'm listening to. But, so to expect that somebody can change, whether it's ourselves or somebody else, it's not going to be instantaneous. The second part then is you have to make space for them to change and for yourself to change. Especially in our political climate right now, I think we are very quick to say, I can't talk to the other person across the aisle. Like, they are so ingrained in what they believe, that's that. And that automatically shuts down any room that there could be for change. In fact, what studies show us is that it actually makes it harder for somebody to admit they're wrong when you've already told them that they're wrong, right? Already assume that there's no wiggle room. Because then they have to defend themselves, right? They almost have to double down, and it can make the behavior better. I'm not saying be a doormat, like when people are around you, but also ask yourself, is this a battle at this moment I need to fight? Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're not. And you really have to choose that inside yourself. The third thing is just where we started. Sometimes that transformation happens and it's not explained either. Like not everything that Jesus happened in that transformation moment even makes sense to the disciples until much later, after the crucifixion, and sometimes something has to die before the transformation can actually happen. So by that I mean sometimes our egos have to die. Sometimes a relationship needs to be dormant for a while, before you can come back and let something resurrect from it. So sometimes there needs to be a separation before the transformation can blossom and bloom. What do you think? Do you think people can change?
I think they can. I mean, I definitely empathize with when you're thinking about family, because those are the people you love the most, who can love you and hurt you the most, right? Those are the people you desire the most to change, but you are also most fearful they won't, right?
Yeah. And sometimes we regress too, right? When we're with family, I think I see my sister and my mom watching. I mean, they know sometimes I go into like 16-year-old Hillary mode, and it's like nobody's favorite mode. So
sometimes my worst self with my family.
Yeah. So sorry, family.
But I think people can change. I mean, I think you talking about transformation being a long process, and I think about myself and how, these are conversations my husband and I have had that people can change. Sometimes it's slow and gradual, and I think for me, the changes I've made in my life didn't happen because someone yelled at me that I needed to change or had an argument. There were lots of gentle conversations and nudges and a lot of understanding, and sometimes some really hard conversations, but they happen gently. Because I am certainly not who I was 15 or 20 years ago. I am very different. And I'm thankful for those differences.
Yep. This also assumes too that when people are changing, we're talking about positive change.
Right.
Sometimes change is not positive change. And then when you're watching somebody go down a path that maybe isn't positive, if you love them, you can maybe help them back onto a path of different change all over again, and say, I've noticed this change in you. Can we talk about it? Can what are you seeing in yourself that's different? And those sorts of changes can be, you might be the first person who's actually said something to that person for whom the change won't come until years later. Often, for one example, when I was a resident director, one of the things they would tell us is, if you see somebody excessively drinking, like, tell them what you're seeing, say something. It may not go anywhere until 10 years down the line, when suddenly
remember.
Yes, when a psychiatrist says to them, has anybody ever mentioned anything to you about your drinking? And they'll say, maybe this has been a pattern that I've had for years. So you just don't know, even if it's not something that's immediate. What we got here? Security and judgment and grace in an environment. Yeah. Hold on, we're going to see what Rebecca says, because she's always got a good thing. I think if there's a heightened sense of scrutiny or judgment over grace in an environment, it shrinks the space for change. Yeah. Well said. Absolutely right. Yeah. And if there's anything that the Bible tells us about stories, is that God is almost continuously creating space for this grace. This idea of even death won't be the limiter of how much grace there can be for change.
That's why I like the story of Jonah, because Jonah is a great story about change and the huge capacity for change and the huge capacity that God has for grace. And sometimes our determination that change cannot and won't happen, and I will not facilitate it because it's not fair.
Yep. Not fair. Yep.
And so I really love that story, and I find that I'm more often Jonah than I am the receiver.
I'm not going to Nineveh. What are you talking about?
I'm more often the one who's like, oh, they're never gonna change,
right?
But again, I think it's also important to push back about not being a doormat too. Like you have to hold that tension,
yes. Because that's the last bit of advice I would give. How do we create healthy boundaries in this moment? Healthy boundaries are critical for creating that space for grace. The ability to have some, because if you're being mistreated, if you're being walked all over, if you're being abused, that's not an area that you can actually hold space for change. Right. You need to protect yourself in that case and leave. And that's something that can change, right? You leaving the situation can be part of the change. And a lot of people stay for a very long time for reasons that are often good reasons to stay. But if a personality can't change, and if the relationship can't change, maybe the only thing that can change in that moment is how much distance there is between. So let's say you're at Thanksgiving dinner and it's going poorly and something happens. What can you change in the moment if that person isn't about to change?
Right.
Can you change the topic? Can you maybe get up and take a 5-minute walk? I've done that. Can you change the environment? Can you maybe even just put on some music and maybe change the space? Sometimes small things go a long way.
Or just let it go and realize that what you're arguing about is not really the potatoes,
yes.
and realize that, okay, fine, the stupid potatoes can be the way you want them because this is about something bigger.
Absolutely.
And we're just going to let it go now and have the conversation about what it's really about later.
Yes. And the thing I think that's maybe most important is, have you spent time with God? Have you changed your agenda for the day and spent a little time with God? Because these are the days that, ironically, we'll tend to miss our normal prayer time, or we'll tend to, we're just out of sync. Take 5 minutes, go do your examen, or go and spend 5 minutes in the field out by your house, or go to church.
And I would say, have somebody who has your back on that in your family, whether it's whoever it is, because I find during the holidays those times are harder to find, especially if you're hosting something. Like when I host, that sends my anxiety higher than just about anything else. Hosting holiday is something I love to do, but it also just sends me. And I feel like I can't take 5 minutes for myself to even take a shower or pray because I'm making sure everybody's okay.
Right.
And so have someone who can back you up to say, no, go. Go take care of yourself. And then when you come back, can I take care of myself
absolutely.
too?
Yeah, tag team. Absolutely. That is, if marriages can't be a tag team, what else can they be? You know,
Right.
like, yeah, take that opportunity to designate the person to say, like, hey,
Your sister, your whoever.
yeah, exactly. Like, you know, when you see, you know, back to Cousin Joe, when you see Cousin Joe coming at me, can you come and rescue me after 5 minutes and like, you know, help me change the topic? You know, like, because sometimes we just feel isolated in the midst of the crowd of our family. So find an ally. Yeah, it's good advice.
Yeah, and I think too, back to when you do need to take distance, for me, the indicator that I need to take distance is if it causes strife with, you know, my person, whoever that person is. Like, so for me, my person is my husband, and if it causes strife between us, then I know we need to take a step back from whatever
something's
it is,
happened.
Whoever it is that's causing that.
Yeah, the way I know it is when when all of a sudden I feel very put upon and I cannot find, back to gratitude, I can't find anything to be grateful for. When I find myself running that tape in my head of like, I cannot believe I have to do this, I have to do that, and then they're saying that, and then I stop and I'm like, and I'm just so angry, I can't be grateful. I know when I'm in a storm, right?
I start brooding.
Yes, like, yes, and that's when you feel your old friend resentment coming in. What can you change? What can you change in that moment? You may not be able to change the other person.
It's hard.
They may be on their own path, and you might be a part of that path. But in the moment, maybe the only thing that can change is you in the situation. So that's gonna do it for this holiday edition of Hive Live. Anything else, Michelle? You wanna?
I don't think so. Just keep being grateful. Just
absolutely.
Pray
That's
through
everything.
gratitude.
If you know, and it sounds so cheesy and hallmarky, but when you look at the root of every one of these holidays, what do they always say? Be grateful. You know, it's about the little things. There's a reason that is.
I think
true.
it's what are you thankful for and what can you share.
Bingo.
And to me, those are, if you can do those two things, then you're good.
Absolutely. Funny how holiday traditions take us out of our normal rhythms. Right? I know. And sometimes that disruption is really great, and it's supposed to take you outside of yourself, and yet what the society has done is they've taken it and they've turned it on its head. Like, I find it so ironic that the 12 days of Christmas that are supposed to be the biggest feast other than Easter, we're exhausted, and it's like it's actually turns into more what Advent's supposed to be about.
Well, yeah, and then the Advent time where you're supposed to be waiting.
It's supposed to be hush and the rush.
It's so hard to wait.
It is.
And be still.
You can't be still. The 4 weeks leading up to Christmas are not typically known as the common peaceful time of the year.
No. So we have to find ways to push. Yeah.
It's countercultural. Like living into these may seem like fun little traditions, but it's actually counterculture, and you're teaching your kids how to live counterculturally, to celebrate these traditions, or if you live alone, doing them by yourself. Like, this is great.
I think trying to focus on these things, and not so much the Christmas list of things I want. Is huge, and it's hard because, at least I find, as a in my situation as a mother, you can't just do that on your own. You have to get all of the rest of your people on board, and they may think you're so weird when you say, like, we're going to calm down, we're going to limit this stuff, because this is not what it's about. Until you've been doing it for a year, and then the next year you're late in putting out your Advent wreath, and then your daughter's like, where's the Advent wreath? You don't know what's sinking in. It's just it's kind of an amazing thing like that. All right. Well, thanks, Michelle. Thank you. Always, for bringing us amazing stuff. Check out more on the Hive, and we'll be back again next month. Don't forget this. When is it? It's if you need to recover from your family Thanksgiving, it's Sunday after Thanksgiving. So
Perfect.
If you need a break from your family, tell them you have a call.
Exactly.
And even if you haven't finished reading the book, just jump on the call and get away.
We got your back. We're your escape clause. All right, everybody. Thanks again so much. Have a great day. Bye. Thank you. Have a good one. See you later, Mom. Bye.